Last fall, around Thanksgiving, I went to visit my mom and little brother who live in a small town in North Carolina. It had been a nice trip. Lots of food, catching up, and just hanging out. But when the weekend ended, I had to make the long drive back to my place in Ohio. It's about a 10-hour drive in total. On the way there, I had split it into 2 parts. I stopped at a cheap motel halfway, got some sleep, and finished the trip the next day. But heading home, I decided I didn't want to waste time stopping again. I figured if I started early and powered through, I'd be home by midnight. Everything was fine at first. I was a few hours into the drive, the radio playing quietly, a thermos of coffee in the cup holder. The roads were clear, and the sky was just cloudy. Not too bad. But around the 5th hour, just after I crossed the state line into West Virginia, the weather turned. First came the rain, light at first, just tapping on the windshield. But then it started to pour, big heavy drops that made it hard to see. Then came the thunder, loud cracks that echoed through the hills. The sky lit up now and then with flashes of lightning, and to top it off, it started to snow. At first, it was just a dusting, but the higher I climbed into the mountains, the thicker it got. Before I knew it, I was crawling along, my tires crunching, over fresh snow, windshield wipers going full speed, and thunder booming every few minutes. It was getting late. The sun had gone down and everything around me was dark and quiet except for the storm. I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. That part of the state is full of long stretches of forest with no towns or gas stations for miles. I was still about 3 hours from home. That's when I saw a car up ahead. It was sitting sideways in the middle of the road, hazard lights blinking through the snow and rain. At first, I thought it had just slid out and the driver was waiting for help. But as I got closer, I saw a man standing next to it. He looked like he was in his late 30s or early 40s. Tall, wearing a heavy jacket and waving at me as I slowed down. I didn't want to stop. The weather was bad and honestly, something about the scene gave me a weird feeling. But his car was blocking most of the road, and with the snow piling up, I couldn't really drive around it safely. So I pulled over a little ways behind him and rolled down my window. "Hey, my car slid and now it's stuck," he said in a slow, kind of broken voice, like English might not be his first language. "Can you help me push it out?" I looked at the car. It wasn't buried or anything, just slightly off the road, one tire in the ditch. It didn't seem like it would take too much effort to move it. I figured if I helped him for a few minutes, I could be back on the road soon, so I nodded and said, "Yeah, sure, I'll give you a hand." I grabbed my gloves and a beanie from the passenger seat, then stepped out into the cold. Right away, the wind smacked me in the face and the snow was coming down even harder. My boots crunched over the icy ground as I made my way to the back of his car. I stood there waiting, expecting him to grab gloves or get in position. But instead, he walked around to the front seat of his car and leaned in. I figured he was looking for something, so I waited. But then I heard it. Talking. It wasn't loud or clear, but I definitely heard a voice. At first I thought he was talking to me, so I called out, "Hey, you say something?" He didn't answer, right away. After a second, he stood up, shut the car door, and walked back toward me with a weird smile. "I was just talking to myself," he said. Something about the way he said it didn't feel right. The smile didn't match his eyes. They looked empty, like there was nothing behind them. Before he had seemed a little nervous, maybe cold, but now he was calm. Too calm. Still, I tried to brush it off and turned around to get ready to push. He came up beside me. But the more I stood there, the more uneasy I felt. My gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I glanced back at his car, and that's when I saw it. Movement. A shadow inside the car, just for a second, then another, more than one. That's when the fear really hit me. I started backing away, slowly at first, then faster. As I turned and made a run for my car, I heard doors opening, 3 of them. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 3 more men getting out of his car. They looked rough. Heavy coats, hoods up, all heading straight for me. I didn't look back again. I sprinted to my driver's side, yanked open the door, and jumped in. Thankfully, I had left the engine running. My hands were shaking as I threw it into drive and slammed on the gas. The tires spun for a second before gripping the snow, and I shot forward, just barely squeezing past the stuck car. One of the men lunged toward me, and I almost hit him as I swerved around. I didn't care. I wasn't stopping. I drove for miles without slowing down. My heart was pounding the whole time, and I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting headlights to come chasing after me. But no one followed. When I finally reached the next town, some tiny place called Elmsbridge, I pulled into the little police station and told them everything. They listened, took notes, and said they'd send someone to check it out. But a week later, I called to follow up, and they said they hadn't found anything. No car, no people, nothing. To this day, I don't know who those men were or what they wanted, but I have my guesses. Maybe they were looking for someone to rob, or worse. Maybe they were waiting for someone who would actually get out and let their guard down. All I know is if I hadn't left when I did, things could have ended very differently, and not in a good way. Now, whenever I drive long distances, especially at night, I always trust my gut. If something feels off, I don't wait around to find out why. Better to seem rude than to disappear without a trace. And every time I hear thunder now, I remember that night. The cold, the snow, the strange man's hollow eyes, and the voices that weren't supposed to be there. It happened in December, right before Christmas. I was 17 years old and living in a small town called Ridgeway with just my mom. Every year around this time, she had to leave for a short business trip, usually about 3 days. She always went right before winter break, so I'd still be in school most of the time. But this year things were a little different. Our school let out early for the holidays, and that happened to be the same day Mom left. So I had the whole house to myself with nothing to do and nowhere to go. I was honestly pretty excited. I thought, cool, I'll just stay inside, eat snacks, and watch movies all day. That was the plan. The weather outside was awful. A full-on thunderstorm had rolled in. It was snowing hard, and there was loud thunder rumbling every so often. The wind howled against the windows like it was angry, and every now and then, lightning would flash across the sky, lighting up the whole living room. It looked like something out of a scary movie. I made some of the food my mom had left for me, leftover spaghetti and garlic bread, and curled up on the couch with a blanket. I picked a horror movie to watch, which might have been a bad idea in hindsight, but I was in the mood for something spooky. Every so often, the thunder would boom so loud it made the windows rattle, and I had to pause the movie to check outside. The wind made weird noises, almost like whispering or someone calling out in the distance. But whenever I looked, there was nothing but swirling snow and dark skies. Then around 7:30 or so, I heard footsteps crunching in the snow outside. Someone was walking up to the front porch. I could hear their boots dragging slowly through the snow, and they let out a few loud coughs as they got closer. I muted the TV and sat up. I wasn't expecting anyone. No deliveries, no friends, nothing. I figured maybe it was one of the neighbors needing help or something, but that didn't make sense either. Who would be out in a snowstorm like this? I waited for a knock or the doorbell, but nothing happened. I stood there staring at the front door, kind of frozen. After a few minutes of silence, I got this weird feeling in my stomach, like something wasn't right. I finally walked over to the door and peeked out the window. No one was there, but the footprints were. I could see them in the fresh snow, leading right up to the front door, then turning around and going back down the steps. That's what really got me. I had heard them walk up. I didn't hear them walk away. How did I miss that? It creeped me out, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe they thought they were at the wrong house and quietly left. Maybe they didn't want to bother me. That kind of made sense. Sort of. I went back to the couch, but I couldn't relax. The thunder was getting louder, and the wind had picked up even more. The lights flickered a few times, and then the power went out for the first time. I sat there in the dark, just staring at my phone screen for light. A few minutes later, the power came back on, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I turned the movie back on, but I was only halfway watching it. I kept glancing at the windows, listening to every little sound. Then around 11 p.m., there was a loud thump on the side of the house. It sounded like something or someone had hit the wall near the kitchen. I froze for a second, trying to decide if I had imagined it. Then the power went out again, just like before. This time I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I slowly walked over to the kitchen window to check. The wind was howling, snow was flying in every direction, and thunder cracked so loud it felt like it shook the whole house. I didn't see anything outside. No movement, no shadows, just the storm. I turned to head back to the living room, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing at the back door, right up against the glass. I jumped and almost dropped my phone. He was standing there with his face pressed close to the window, trying to look inside. The porch light was off, so I could barely see him, but his face was just visible in the lightning flashes. His eyes were wide and unblinking, and his breath fogged up the glass. "Hey, kid," he said in a raspy voice. "Can you open the door? I'm freezing out here." He reached out and rattled the doorknob like he was trying to open it. I didn't move. I just stood there staring at him. "Come on," he said again. "Let me in, please." Something about him felt really off. His voice didn't sound right. It was too calm, too slow, like he was trying too hard to sound friendly. And the way he was standing there, so close to the door, barely blinking, it made my skin crawl. I slowly started backing up. That's when his expression changed. His fake smile dropped and his face twisted into an angry scowl. "Open the door," he shouted, slamming his fist against the glass so hard I thought it might crack. I turned and ran to the hallway, grabbing my phone to call 911. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The signal was terrible. The call wouldn't go through. I tried again, and on the third or fourth try, I finally heard a voice on the other end. I quickly told them what was happening, gave them my address, and they said officers were on their way. I peeked back into the kitchen, and the man was still there, pounding on the door, yelling something I couldn't make out over the storm. And then, just like that, he was gone. He ran off into the dark without another word. I couldn't tell which way he went. It took the police about 30 minutes to get to my house. The roads were bad and the snow wasn't letting up. I told them everything I could. They looked around the yard and found the footprints just like I had. The ones that came right up to the door and then disappeared into the trees out back. I called my mom after that and told her what happened. She was scared out of her mind and said she'd come home early if she could. But by then, the man was long gone. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he really wanted. Maybe he was just a stranger caught in the storm, desperate to get inside. But if that were true, why didn't he knock at the front door like a normal person? Why try to sneak around to the back? Why stand there in the dark staring into the house, smiling like that? No one knows. The police never found him, and I never saw him again.